Welcome to Journey to Oneness. We usually take the first 5 minutes just to kind of get acclimated, make sure as many people as possible can get on. And so each week, if you can be here at 7, that helps. We'll start by 7:05. Going to be probably about 2 hours. Sometimes we might finish early, but I don't think that's going to happen tonight. So I just want to introduce myself. I am Kelly Messick, and I am pastor for premarital couples at Marriage and Family at Vineyard Columbus. So let's see. Lanika, can you mute yourself? Yeah, there you go. Oh, great. Isn't it fun doing this online? We actually do have a lot of fun here once we get all the technical things to work right. So I'm Kelly Messick. I am pastor, one of the pastors in Marriage and Family, and I oversee the premarital program. So I'll be with you here every week, but we will also have couples that are coaches that are going to join us and teach with us. That's who Cindy and Doug are. They're here with us tonight. And so when I say coaches, what I mean is that we have trained married couples to meet with engaged or committed dating couples like you before they get married. It's a wonderful program. It's been going for 22 years now. We have done probably about 35 coach couples. And so we'll tell you more about that later, but I just thought I would let you know that the church, I actually have been in this position for 22 years, which is a long time for anybody to do anything. But I only mention that so that you can know that we have really put the time and effort into making these as excellent as possible. And also, I've met with hundreds and hundreds of couples over those years. I've gotten to see just about any circumstances or situations that you can imagine. Vineyard Columbus is a very diverse and large church, and so I've had the privilege of getting to know couples and helping them to prepare. That's what we're here for. So today, that's what we're going to do. We are going to start our classes out tonight with covenant, marriage covenant. Now, we did send you some videos to watch. And I don't know if everybody, we didn't send them super early, so I don't know if you got the chance to watch them. But if you didn't, I don't think you'll be lost tonight. We're going to make sure you can track along with us. But I would say to watch them afterwards. There's nothing in those videos that's not worth hearing again. So I think that would be a great idea if you weren't able to watch them. Let's try this. Lanika again. All right, let's see. Anything else? Oh, you should have received, let's see, I will take a show of hands here. How many received their manual? They got the email and they've downloaded their manual. Not very many. Okay, so Mindy Lehman is the person that you will see her name a lot over the next 6 weeks. She's going to be sending you emails before class and after class. After class portion will include a recording of this class. So if you see on your screen that we're being recorded, that's why. It's only for folks that missed a class. So we do not send it out. We don't put it up on the web. People aren't going to see your face unless they're in the class. Okay. Let me know if there's anything about that that's troublesome. So, have I missed anything, Doug and Cindy? I don't think I have.
I don't think you have.
Okay, yeah, your participants guide is what you'll use to follow along, and there are spaces to take notes if you're a note taker. And we will do something a little different each week, but I think that you'll find it really helpful and interesting. I hope so. One of the things I like to take a moment to do is to find out how many of you are from Vineyard Columbus. First of all, can I get a show of hands? Okay, oh, great. We've got a few people from Vineyard Columbus. Let's see. And then who is from another church, an outside church? We love to offer this to other folks. Okay. All right. You want to unmute and tell us what church you're from, especially since you're guests?
I'm from, this is Donna. I'm from Rhema Christian Center.
Great. We love Rhema.
Welcome.
This is Madison. We come from a nearby church, New Salem.
Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, these are all old friends of Vineyard Columbus. That's wonderful. And who else? Stephen?
Okay, sorry. This is Stefan. My partner, Alyssa, is a member of Vineyard Columbus, but I go to vineyards in Yakima, Washington, and Covington, Washington.
Is that Washington State?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You're coming from a long way away. Okay. Well, welcome.
Thanks for joining us at the end of a workday. A couple hours difference there.
You wouldn't happen to know where the International Paper Box Plant is at Yakima, would you? Okay. My company has a plant in Yakima.
Oh, there you go. Anybody else from another church? You can unmute and tell us where you're from.
Yes, Keyshawn. We're from City of Grace.
City of Grace. Okay. And that's in Columbus?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's new to me. I thought I saw someone had signed up from Vineyard Church of Delaware County. Are you here tonight? No? Okay. Maybe they couldn't make it. All right. Well, we're just really glad to have you, and we'll be seeing a lot more of each other. So I would say that just up front that we will have times for interaction, for questions and that kind of thing. But if you're not involved in that, please keep yourself muted, and that would help us. That helps, with all that cutting off and kind of things that happen on Zoom. So very good. I said that I could introduce you to Doug and Cindy, but I'm going to have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about themselves, and then just kind of start out with some icebreakers. So
Sounds good. Well,
take it over.
We're Doug and Cindy, and just a couple quick things about us. We grew up in Cleveland, which was a great place to grow up. We knew each other in high school, didn't date in high school. The Lord has his timing, and I was pretty wild in high school. So it was good that her father probably wouldn't have let her date me in high school. And we ran into each other down in college at Miami University, and we joked that I picked her up in a McDonald's.
That's a whole long story.
Yeah, we don't have time to go into that. So anyways, we ended up meeting in Miami again, and we got married. We have
How many years have you been married?
we've been married, ready for this, 40 years.
I know we don't look it, right?
We don't look it.
Yeah.
We just celebrated
40 years.
uh,
It can be done, peoples.
and it gets better. We just celebrated our 40th year anniversary with all our kids in the Caribbean, which was awesome. So we have 3 kids, one in Detroit and one in Colorado, and we have one here in Columbus. We have 3 grandkids, and grandkids are awesome. All in due time, but we enjoy them, and they live in Detroit as well. I am a regional sales manager. I've been selling empty boxes for 40 years. So if you get an Amazon box, chances are if you lift over the bottom of it, it's got my company on it, International Paper. So we make boxes for them and for Anheuser-Busch and for a number of other people, but it's a really, really big company. And Cindy?
Oh, so a couple years ago, I retired from having my own high fashion jewelry business. And so now I work as a part-time event planner at Quest Conference Centers over on Polaris. So if you ever need meeting space, give me a jingle. But also I teach. I'm part of the teaching team over at Bible Study Fellowship. If anybody knows about Bible Study Fellowship, which is a worldwide 9-month per year inductive Bible study.
And I would start off by saying thank you and congratulations for being here. Just taking the time to do this it shows the level of importance of your relationship. And I can tell you that if you're willing to put into your relationship the work that needs to be done, you'll have a love affair for a lifetime. And I'm sure Cindy will use that comment several times. So glad to have you. We're very real. I mean, we're going to be very open and honest about these things. Cindy's going to talk about the sex portion because I'm too embarrassed. But I'm just kidding. You'll find that we do have a sense of humor. But no, again, thanks for being with us. We'll try to keep it interesting and keep it real.
Right. And, we're going to stay on after the call. If you have questions, or comments or concerns, and we'll stay on, at the end if you want to hang out with us for a little bit and talk about things. But now you know a little bit about us. We want to know about you.
All right. So what we'd like to know is where were you when you first saw your dating partner or your fiance in person? Where were you? Just raise your hand and take yourself off mute and let us know. Where were you when you saw them for the first time? Anybody? Who's the first brave one?
Okay.
Donna and Marcus here. We were at a restaurant, BJ's, to be exact.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Actually, my first time seeing her, I was laying in bed, swiping across the apps. So we connected online, matched, and set up a date. And here we are.
That's amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, our daughter met her husband on Tinder. Yeah.
We had a couple that we finished coaching probably two couples ago, and they met online, and then they met for the first time, and he is 6'6", and she was like 5'1", and they didn't know it till he showed up at the door.
They're like,
She's
oh,
looking up at him.
So online dating actually works, huh?
Oh yeah.
I guess.
Oh yeah. Who else?
All right. Corinne and Jonathan. I think you had your hands
Take
up.
yourself off mute.
Hey, how y'all doing? Yeah, I did. I met this lovely lady in 07 at my cousin's house.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a birthday party for his cousin's daughter. And my kids were invited to the birthday party. And when I came, that's when we met.
That's
So
good.
15 years.
Wow.
Wow, that's great. Good,
Yeah.
good.
Anybody else?
We'll go next. Madison and Ryan, and we met at the YMCA.
Were you working there? Were you working out there or?
Both.
Working, yeah.
Yeah.
You challenged them to one-on-one, right? Yeah.
I did, and we played basketball and volleyball, and he won basketball and I won volleyball. But now he can beat me in both. So.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's fun.
Anybody else?
What about you, Derek and Sarah? I'm going to call you out.
Hey, I'm Derek. This is my fiance, Sarah. We met at Miami University. Yeah, so just like you. So
You're
that
going to be a
was
Miami merger.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we graduated in 2018. We met probably in 2017. I'm not sure exactly when we first met or saw each other, but she was dating my friend, which is how I originally came to know her at Miami. And then after we graduated, like way after we started dating, and then now we're engaged.
That's
Congratulations.
Great. That is great.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share?
This is Keyshawn and Lanika. We met at work.
Good place to meet.
Well, great. Well, thank you all for sharing about how you met. That's always super fun for me
Wish
to
we had
kind
more
of see.
time.
Yeah. But we'll get to know each other too more and more as we get a little bit closer. So as Kelly said, tonight we are going to jump in and start off with covenant. And the reason we do that is because we want to talk about when you want to have a marriage that comes under God, you want a Christian marriage, that looks very, very different than the world's version of marriage. And so we really want to make sure that we all are on the same page. We know what this means. What does covenant look like? And why is it different than what the world offers? And, there's so many people that we've come in contact with that there's not one, role model for them of a successful marriage in their inner circle. And so, it's very hard because they think that a love affair for a lifetime isn't possible. But one of the reasons that Doug and I do this, and we've been coaching couples for decades, and that is because we want to encourage you all that you can be married for 40 years. You can have a wonderful marriage. Now, it's not always great on every single day, but when you do the work, and we're going to talk about some of those things with conflict resolution and finances and other things, it's to empower you so that you can have a love affair and have a wonderful, wonderful marriage. So if you didn't have a chance, one of the videos that you were to watch for tonight is the video that we did a while ago about the difference between a contractual marriage and a covenant marriage. And so there, Doug and I talk about the 4 or 5 things that differentiate a worldly marriage, a contractual marriage, and one that is submitted under God. And really, the whole premise, I'm not going to cover it right now. Go back and watch it if you didn't have a chance to. But the whole premise is that, do you want a marriage where it's an if-then proposition? If you do this, then I will do this. If you will make me happy, then I will stick around. If you decide to do this, then I will do this. Or do you want a covenant marriage where you are totally committed, where you can be totally vulnerable with one another and no one's going anywhere? There's no conditions. It's unconditional. And you put God at the head of your marriage. So I don't know about you, but I want a covenant marriage. I want one that's going to get me through the highs and the lows and the things that life hits us in life. I want to know that I have a life partner that is going to stick with me through the highs and the lows, through my good, my bad, and my ugly. And just like I stand by Doug in his good and his bad and his ugly. And it's not where I have to worry about, I have to act a certain way in order for him to stick around.
You're coming up to the expiration of the 3-year deal. I mean, that's what happens with contracts. I have a 3-year deal. As long as you do all these things, we're good. I may extend it. I may just say, hey, I'm going to be a free agent. So that's a good comparison.
Right. So make sure you watch that video about what a contractual marriage looks like and what a covenant marriage looks like and the differences. So from that, we're going to move into a little bit deeper into covenant marriage. What does a covenant marriage look like? So we're going to actually go through the promises, the commitments, the vows that you will make on a wedding day.
What happened?
So you want to take it away, honey?
Yep, I do.
Commitment number 1, you actually have in your participants guide, it's called in-class teaching notes, and it's going to go all through the different, four vows that we're going to cover. So you can make notes on that if you would like.
So commitment number one, and these aren't going to be a surprise in many cases. You've heard this before. So one of the number one vows is, will you forsake all others? So I took a look at that and I thought about that and I said, let's break it down. Forsake. And forsake means to give up something, to give up something. You know, one flesh, if you look at that, is two become one. The one word that gets me too is, will you do this forever? You know, and we talked about forever, and we had no idea when we first got married. How long is forever? Forever is a long time. And right now, it doesn't seem so long, even though we've been married 40 years. But that's another part of the vows that we went through. And then we also talked about another part of our vow, only after God. And when you say only after God, it really means putting God first and putting your spouse second. The other thing in that vow, too, is I commit to, what are you committing to? I commit to faithfulness. I commit to fidelity. And when we say that, we commit both physically and emotionally. And it's important to think about that you have both of those, the physical and the emotional side. We're committing to trust in the deepest way. And I can't stress enough how important that word trust is. Because trust in the aspect of our emotional and our physical relationship we have with our spouse or our partner is a whole nother level of trust. You could have 100 things that your significant other does for you that put, deposits in the tank from a trust standpoint, but then you could have one experience that could break that trust, especially when it's in marriage. One of the things that becomes challenging now is the phone. These things right here, and text messages and websites visited. There's so many different things that can attract us that we need to be able to trust our spouse and our partner exactly what they're doing when it comes to those things. And, we talked too about, I will not give away things that belong to us. And in the interest of time, I won't ask you, but what belongs to each of us? And one of them would be our bodies. Our bodies belong to each of us. Our time, our secrets. We don't have secrets from each other. Our finances, and you'll talk about finances in the training in the future. Our passion, our priorities, all these are things that belong to us in our relationship. Cindy's my best friend, and I always want it to be that way. But we have to have that trust involved in our relationship. One of the things that becomes too, we've had people, their best friend, maybe a guy or a girl or someone from the opposite sex, and we've had to say, that's a relationship that you might need to put some boundaries on and think about a little differently after you end up getting married. I know when I travel, if there's female salespeople that work with me, I'll stay in a different hotel because I just don't want to have any look of any impropriety when it comes to that. So trust is extremely important when you consider that first vow.
We're moving on to the second commitment or vow that you will make when you become husband and wife is, do you vow to have and to hold from this day forward? And like Doug said, forever, for a lifetime, until death do you part, right? And so it is. And I know that, Rich Nathan said one time, you want to have a really great marriage, choose well, because it's going to be forever. That is God's intent. And so with that in mind, what I also like about this commitment is it's not to have and to hold on to. You're right. Think of this, to have and to hold means to have and to cherish. So it's a matter of cherishing one another. It's not a controlling the other person. It is about cherishing that other person in your life. And when you have and you cherish and you hold another person in your life, you're also making some other commitments with that. And number one is that you are making a commitment to give and receive intimacy from that person. That means that you're willing to give your body to the other person, and that other person is willing to give their body to you. It is an amazing gift, and we're going to get into this a little bit later. It's an amazing gift that God gives to married couples as a way to solidify their commitment, to solidify their relationship, and to deepen it spiritually even. So in our intimate relationship, it's not a power struggle, like it's not where, you're getting in bed, like, didn't take out the garbage there, there's no kissing tonight, Daddy, so it's not that at all, right? It's the giving and it's receiving. It is both. Another thing in this vow, when you have and you hold and cherish each other, you're committing to a togetherness. You're committing to living a life together. And this means creating a life together. And Doug and I have something that we call married singles. And it just saddens our heart because we know many people, they're married singles. They may be married, but he's doing his thing and she's doing her thing. And they don't really have a combined life. Well, when you make this vow, you're making a vow that doesn't mean you can't go out with your girls, you can't go out with your buds, do axe throwing and everything else. That just means that you're making the commitment to a life together. And it also means that you're willing to do things to enhance your life together, trying new things, trying new experiences together, going on adventures together. So again, to have and to hold and to cherish one another.
Okay. The next vow is, will you take this man or woman to be your lawful wedded husband and wife? And when I think about that, one of the things I think about is, I'm committed to giving and receiving my emotional support to Cindy. And the emotional aspect of our relationship is huge. And it's really more important for some people than it is for others. I can tell you this, and we'll probably talk about it here in a little bit. If we're not in sync from an emotional standpoint, she has a really difficult time wanting to be intimate with me. I'm a man, doesn't necessarily work that way for me, but the emotional aspect of our relationship is super important to her. And this is also where understanding your spouse's love language comes into play, because God made us different. And I'll talk about an example on that when we get into love languages here in a little bit. But when we're taking care of putting emotional deposits into each other's emotional tank, it flows from one to the other. We don't have scorekeeping. If I do something for Cindy, I don't expect her to do something necessarily for me. We just are here to try to serve each other. And really, she's my safe zone. When I'm in a tough spot and I'm under a lot of stress and pressure, she's my safe zone. When we talk about the hold part, she mentioned the hold part. That's important too. The whole part is the physical aspect, hugs, holding hands, sitting next to each other. All those things are important in our marriage relationship. And when you talk about what's the secret in all this, it's really the daily commitment. And, those of you that go to the Vineyard have heard our founding pastor, Rich Nathan, talk about left foot, right foot. Left foot, tell her you love her. Right foot, tell him you love him. And you do that on a regular basis. And that's something that's been very important in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next commitment and vow that you will make is, will you take this man or this woman to be your lawfully wedded spouse? And, we talked about that a covenant marriage is one that comes under God, so that God recognizes this union. But also society recognizes this union. So now you're becoming a legally bound couple in the eyes of society. And so with that, you are now hooked together financially. You're hooked together for responsibility for making decisions together. And so this is really important to have a lot of great conversation and be on the same page. So this is making a commitment that you both are going to be financially responsible, that one is not going to go and, go buy an expensive car and not discuss it with their partner. Someone is not going to go out and decide, oh yeah, I got a job offer today. We're moving to Seattle in next month. These are things that need to be discussed together. You're making this promise. And if you happen to have a lot of debt or you're bringing some financial stresses to this relationship, then you make a commitment to talk about it. You make a commitment to share what that is. There's no secrets within a marriage covenant. Another thing is you're committing to make important decisions together. If what church you're going to be going to, maybe how you're going to serve in the church, whether it be together as a couple or whether you'll do individual. What small group do you want to be a part of? So, these are very important things. You are now a team. You are now one. And so not just in the eyes of God, but now in the eyes of society.
The last vow that we have is, will you pledge to live with him or her after the teaching of the Bible, and will you love him or her as Christ loves the church? And this is obviously one of the most important vows. So what does this really mean if you stop and think about it? If you're a follower of Jesus, hey, let's face it, he gives us a guidebook. And that guidebook and that manual is the Bible, and that's his inspired word. And when you think about it, God's guidance will provide us forgiveness and repentance. One of the things that we do that I love, and Cindy's been awesome about this, is she keeps short lists. And what I mean by that is my dad would do something and my mom would remind him about it many, many, many times. And Cindy's awesome about that. I'll do something that's not so smart. There'll be one comment made in a loving fashion and I never hear about it again. So I really appreciate that about her. God guides us on mutual responsibility for our home and our family, our sexual responsibility. We'll talk about our financial responsibility, how to be a servant, and how to love. The Bible teaches what true love looks like. How does Christ love the church? He loves it with agape love. And agape love originated from God. It's the highest form of love when he humbled himself on the cross. So I will just say this, and finishing up this part of it is, I'm committed to developing a shared spiritual life together that invest in my heart and my time to grow in this endeavor. One of the keys that we found from a foundational element is spiritual life and prayer with each other. It's studying our Bible together. We both do Bible study together, not only one Bible study, but go through Bible study fellowship. And praying together really, really helps us keep in a Christian covenant marriage because no matter what, we're always going to treat each other with love.
And preference.
Yes.
So now you get a chance to really work on what kind of relationship did you see modeled for you? And so in your participant's guide, you're going to look for, I'm going to do this for, maybe the next 9 minutes. It's called the Covenant Marriage Activity. It's the Parents' Relationship Inventory. One thing that Doug and I really have come to know more and more every year is your family of origin plays a huge part in your expectations for your relationship. And so whether it was fantastic, great. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And the inventory is on page 12, if you're looking for that in your participant's guide. If it wasn't your parents, then think about an aunt or grandparents or someone else that can model that for you. But just go through those. You're going to strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with those questions. Okay. And then what we want to do then is come back here and we'll kind of talk about it. So let's give you 8 minutes to do that. Ready, set, go. Well, is there anyone that would be brave enough to get us started? Anybody willing to kind of share maybe something that you strongly agreed with, maybe something you and your partner found similar or different? I know it's hard to share sometimes when you're new. We're all here together. We're learning.
I'm willing to share.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure everybody has different backgrounds. So my parents wasn't married, so I didn't see that growing up. So it's really hard to have a model. You know, I had mentors and spiritual leaders and other people in my life that I can see, but you know, from the parents, didn't see that. So it's really, I mean, it's kind of hard to answer those questions. When they were around, they were respectful and didn't argue in front of us, those type of things. But on a consistent day-to-day basis, wasn't a model for me.
Mhm.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcus. What about you, Donna? What was your experience growing up?
So my parents were married, but the experience wasn't necessarily great. They both were, you know, and I would say almost like a competition to dominate in the marriage, which eventually led to their divorce. However, after the divorce, my father remarried. So there is, you know, I did and currently still learning from his marriage today, where I can appreciate their closeness and their friendship and their desire to kind of work through any issues that they do have. And, you know, they do it sometimes in front of us to show, you know, they can get through things, and some of it they keep private as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing.
You know,
Anybody
I
else?
I would just chime in real quick. You made me think of something, Donna. I know we have some folks on here that that have children from a previous marriage, and so there will be a new family being started that way. And one of the things that we realize about remarriage or step parenting, blended families, is that we have the option to show the children in the relationship something really wonderful. And one of the things we found is that when the best thing you can do for the children is to have them see you loving their parent well. You know, so you have the opportunity to start a new legacy for them with your marriage. And it again, it's just a beautiful thing that can happen. Obviously it wasn't ideal, you know, to start out, or things weren't what they could have been, but you have that opportunity now. So I love that.
Yeah.
God is redeeming.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. That's wonderful.
Anybody else?
Anybody else want to share before we move on?
I can jump in.
Great. Thank you.
I think one area of similarity between Alyssa and I, we had growing up, both our parents were and still are together. So I think we're pretty lucky. Is that our folks were generally supportive of each other, and that there was kind of like an emphasis on respect for each person. And I think that is that's particularly meaningful to me and also Alyssa. So that's something we would like to both emulate.
Thank you so much.
I'll go next.
Oh, go ahead, Desiree. I'll wait for you.
So I thought this was an interesting exercise because I was raised by my grandparents. My parents, my mom got pregnant with me in high school. My parents got married and then divorced probably before they were 21. So, and each of my parents remarried after divorce. So I was thinking about like, which marriage do I choose? And I found myself sort of just jotting down all of the things from all of their marriages, and the things that I enjoyed. But I think because of that situation, the one thing that I really value is like being able to raise children in a household with biological parents, because that's something I didn't have. And I saw like my cousins, it's just a difference. I do believe that there's a difference because I was the child and I was an only child. So I had all the attention, but I still felt that isolation at times. And then I think both of my parents, my mom and my dad, are both in like working through this exercise, alpha people with alpha personalities. And so seeing how their alpha personalities work in their new marriages is actually very beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, that should have never worked out. But it's just an interesting exercise to do because I feel like I had to pull from 3 different marriages.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Great insight.
I think it's so great too, then, that when you can kind of step away and, really look at relationships that were close to you, marriages that were close to you, whether they were parents or not, and just say, what are some things that I really appreciated about that relationship that I want to maybe bring into my own. And, what are ones that I hope we never bring into our relationship. I don't want to bring into it because we have both, whether your parents are together or not together, you have both.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Again, hello.
Yeah, Daniel, go.
Hi again, Dan Addison. Thanks to Ray for going ahead. I think I would just add to that as far as the exercise. In my experience, my parents were together and still together. They've been married for over 40 years or so, something like that. But, there had been a lot of, you would say, ups and downs, challenges, different things through the years. There are pros that I think you can take from anything and also cons in general. I think as far as the pro, the number one thing I personally still take is the commitment to sticking to it. I think so many times in life we change direction or kind of give up on stuff. And I certainly admire that they were able to still do that even now with my father having, them being older, my father having health challenges. I admire my mother for some of her commitment. I think as far as maybe challenges, there were challenges. I mean, I have a little bit of a unique story in that my parents moved here actually from West Africa in the 70s. So, I was, brought up or born in the 80s, but, some of the experiences I think are really a blend of what we, would experience for probably most Americans, but then also certainly experiences that are more common elsewhere. And I think some of that showed itself in terms of how they interacted. In that setting, my dad had a little bit more of a, you could say, stronger personality. And I think with that said, just learning from some of the maybe things that could have been better, you could say, along multiple fronts. But I think in terms of the pro, the biggest thing I take is the commitment and durability and willingness to understand that it's a lifetime decision and not something to be taken lightly.
Thank you.
Well said, Daniel. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll say something. This is Lanika. So my parents are still together. They've been together 50 years. So my example, I've seen everything, good, bad, ugly. I remember when they were young. Now they're getting older. So the one thing I take away from marriage is you don't give up and you stay no matter what.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly said something too, and a real quick comment I'd make. Because I was an only child, and my parents loved each other. But the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I didn't bring into the marriage, because you talk about changing your legacy, was the way they argued, because they didn't know that I heard them. and they would get into these knockdown, drag out arguments and broke all the rules where my mom would say all this stuff. My dad wouldn't say anything. Then he'd say a real zinger, but then she either called her mom, that was a no-no, or she ran. We called her a runner. And she'd run and leave the house. So just as a quick example, I wanted to make sure that in our marriage, we handled our conflict differently, especially from the standpoint of, what our kids saw and didn't see. And that's really been a big benefit of our marriage. So I took a negative and we're able to make it a positive with God's blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's sometimes, that Daniel and Lanika both brought up, this is why we're talking about covenant. This is long-term commitment in the highs and the lows. And you're not married 40 years and every day is just peachy.
Oh, sure it is.
It's one of those things where some days we have to make a decision to love one another.
What do you say? You may not like me, but you love me?
Yes. I say, I may say, you know what? I love you. I don't really like you right now, but I love you. And so you can create an amazing marriage when you always have that commitment, because then you can be your true self with that other person, because no one's going anywhere. You have this complete commitment together. So thank you so much.
And there's some good stuff, and I'd continue the conversation on that.
Absolutely. If you didn't get down to the bottom questions about what you do want to emulate, what you may not want to emulate, kind of do that as homework. I think that's a really great date night conversation to have. If you would like to start a new legacy, like Doug talked about, what might that look like? What do you want to change in that regard? Well, you did so well on this exercise. Guess what? We're going to give you another one. So we want you to find the one that says marriage. Here we are. It's called the Marriage Covenant Personal Application.
Page 14.
Thank you.
16.
No, on hers, on their participant guides there.
Oh, okay.
So this is what we want to do next. We're going to do this again, you'll have about another, let's say 7 minutes to do this. So this really starts talking about when we went through the commitments, the vows that Doug and I just went through. This is an exercise for you to go through here and to determine, are you ready to make this lifelong decision to be with this one person for your love affair? Okay. So you've got, what did I say? 7 minutes?
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Ready, set, go.
All righty, everyone. I think that was plenty of time. It looks like some people are still talking. Hopefully you can put a little pin in that and continue that conversation. This exercise, that when we put this in our manual, we really wanted to make sure that folks knew the difference between the contract and the covenant wedding. So this kind of goes along with that teaching, whether you watch the video or not, and the idea that today often folks don't know what a Christian covenant is about. And what we know at Vineyard Columbus and Christians in general is that it's different when you make vows to one another and to God. Basically, it sounds, when I read these things, it sounds like, whoa, who could possibly ever do all these things well? How could I possibly ever keep all of these vows so perfectly? with my husband, but the actual benefit, the difference is that I have also made them to God, and God joins me. He joins my husband and I when we make those vows to one another, and when we choose one another every day. So more than me being able to keep my vows with God's empowerment help to keep me. You know, like that's what the difference is. And so being able to check yes to all of these things on this list, what I like to say is that doesn't mean that you're going to all the time be getting an A+ in all of them. But what it does say is these are the kinds of things that make a Christian marriage different. And what it means to have Jesus at the center of your relationship. I will tell you that in my marriage, I've been married 29 years, and in my marriage, my husband and I have, like, there are times when it's been really hard. There's been times when it's really good, but what we know is that there is no time when we ever want to talk about what we would do differently. There are some times when my relationship with God, or the way I'm following Jesus, kind of is a few steps ahead of his, and vice versa. Sometimes when I read the Bible a lot more than he does, sometimes when he prays a lot more than I do, there are unique ways that we come together, and actually, I really believe we make each other better. And so my little comment here, my little, kind of infusion is of wisdom, not of legality. The Bible gives us all of these insights. It gives us all of these, you might even say commands. And yet what's always there equally at all times is God's grace. Mm-hmm. Jesus wants us to come to him so that we can make these vows to one another. We're not expected to be able to do it all on our own, ever. Like, that's the point. That was the point of him coming for us. And so when you look at these things, if there's something inside of you just kind of goes, whoa, or, oh, that I wasn't thinking about that part. For instance, I am committed to be actively involved in the discipleship of our children. That sounds really formal. Like, there's some book somewhere, you got to check all the boxes and do everything. This means, for me, what it means is again, let your children see you loving one another. That is discipleship, right? If they see you saying one thing and doing another, then they're getting confused, and that's poor discipleship. If they see things that go wrong sometimes and you talk to them about it, you're able to say, we really had a rough week last week, or this was really hard tonight. We love each other. We're here for each other. God is going to help us. That's when you are discipling them. So when we say this, we're not saying you're going to do the Westminster Catechism with them, and you both have to do it. Do you see what I'm like? Hopefully there'll be lots of people involved in discipling your children. So this is meant to be something to say, if there is something that I'm not comfortable with, then I can talk to my partner, dating partner, future spouse about it, or I can talk to someone else about it. Sometimes just thinking out loud about our fears can kind of dispel them, talking to someone else about it. And so maybe someone, or maybe you'll do our program and you'll have coaches you can talk to about that. But being able to say yes to every single one of these all right now is not necessary to get married. There are some that are really important, I would say the last one, committed to make pledges, promises, and vows to God, as well as my spouse, on my wedding day. And again, one of the wonderful things about what I've gotten to do all these years, these decades, is that I've gotten to do weddings for couples, and I get to do these vows with them. So I know I've been to weddings where there are no Christian vows, and it's a very different experience. It's a holy experience when you invite God into your relationship in that way, and he gives you his blessing. So does anyone have any questions about this? I think it's pretty straightforward, but do you have any questions for me? Going. All right. Well, Cindy and Doug, you can take it from here. Give you a few more minutes on love languages.
Oh, all right, men.
Men.
Very important question. Did you know that you don't speak the same language, potentially speak the same language as your significant other? Does that come as a surprise to you? And women, the same goes for you. Did you know that your husband or your partner may not speak the same language? Let me just give you a quick example. A few years ago, it was probably 7:30 at night, and I said to Cindy, I said, hey, it's 7:30. Are you interested in a little bit of romantic, sexy time tonight? And or she said that to me, and I'm like, yeah, of course. And kids weren't home. She says, yeah, of course. So she says, well, let's watch a movie, and then we'll go upstairs. So we watched a movie for about 2 hours, and the minute the movie was over, I sprang into action. I put my arm around her and I started giving her kisses and stuff like that. And she goes, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I go, well, you told me you wanted, to go upstairs and have sex. She goes, you haven't said a word to me about it for the last 2 hours. And I said to her, what was I supposed to do every 15 minutes? Can't wait to go upstairs. Can't wait to kiss you. This movie's not as exciting as you are, honey. And I just sat there and I said, we're like from different planets, because, I'm a man and I didn't think I had to go through all of this preparation, but it's a great example of how men and women are different. And I will tell you, you're going to get a lot of good ideas and a lot of good coaching and training during your commitment that Kelly's going to go through with you. I personally think love languages is probably one of the most important things for success in our marriage. And we're not going to have a ton of time to spend on it. It's in the video. Cindy's going to talk about it a little bit. I would encourage you, please watch the video, get the book, and I'll turn it over to my bride to take it from here.
Raise your hands if you are familiar with Love Languages, Gary Chapman's book. Awesome.
Several of you.
Yeah, great. It's been around a little while. But it's so good because just like Kelly said, is loving each other well is one of the best things that you can do for your marriage and for showing people around you, being a good role model of what a Christian marriage is. But how do we love each other well? We just typically we give love the way that we like to receive love. But our partners may think, well, that's nice, but I don't feel loved by that. Like I remember one time, Doug detailed my car and filled it up with gas. And he came in, honey, I cleaned your car. I'm like, great, thanks. And he's like, wait a minute. Like I expected to get some more brownie points for that one. And I'm like, honey, I appreciate it, but I don't feel like you love me because you did it. And so, that was one of them, right? Acts of service. So let's just kind of review what the 5 love languages are. Quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and physical touch, right? So most of them, and this is also in the Alpha Us video that you can watch, they kind of go through it. And actually, Gary Chapman's interviewed, which I thought was so cool in the video, but he kind of goes through them. So if you don't know each other's, that would be a great exercise for you to do, because you have top 2 that you really lean toward. So my top 2 love languages, number 1 is words of affirmation, and then physical touch. And yours are?
Quality time and physical touch.
So there's a lot of touching going on. Hand holding, rub each other's backs. But my top one is words of affirmation, and Doug's is quality time. And so, you might wonder, why are we putting it all in here in covenant? Because this is how we receive love. We have those emotional tanks that we have inside of us. And it is our relationship with Jesus and the Holy Spirit that fills that emotional tank. But our partners, our spouses also can contribute to that emotional tank, and they can also siphon it off. And so this is just part of creating a vibrant and wonderful marriage, is to know how you feel, how your partner and you feel love. So we're going to kind of give you some examples for that we've had in our life, because it's a day-to-day thing. And so when you become very, very aware, it can be very helpful. So this was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was really busy with my jewelry business. Doug's busy. He's at the office. This is pre-COVID. He's at his office. I'm, in my home office, and we're syncing our calendars together, and we're going through all that. And then at the very end, Doug says to me, "Nice doing business with you." Well, my wifey radar went off, and I went, "Woo," because I'm like, okay, what does that comment tell me? That comment was, he's feeling neglected. His quality time with me is not being met. So I then immediately said, all right, on the calendar, we're having a date night this week. So we had to be intentional in getting, feeding his emotional tank. And so I just am so grateful that that the Lord kind of nudged me to understand that's what he was saying. And I didn't dismiss that comment as a snarky comment, that it was really him saying to me, honey, I miss you. I miss us. I need some quality time with you. So that's just one instance where I noticed his love language wasn't being met.
And I had one with Cindy. She had a birthday, and it was a special day, and we were just at the point we weren't going to buy each other gifts. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna write her a love letter.
Well, you asked me what I wanted from her.
Yeah, she wanted a love letter. So I go down to the kid's notebook, and I tore out the notebook. I started writing a love letter, and then I go, man, that's not right. So I actually went to Walgreens and I bought stationery, and I wrote her a love letter, and she loved it. It was awesome. But that's what spoke to her. And obviously in it, I was affirming in my love for her. But it's just a simple example that a lot of these things can be simple. They don't have to cost a lot of money. But in that case, it met her love language in terms of, words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Doug and I kind of joke that, I kind of expect all of them from him.
Oh,
I want them all, baby. I just want them all. But there's one or two that are really, that kind of come to the top that are really most important. I had one
I tried. I used to tell the story. I used to go to Flowerama, going north on Route 3 in Westerville, and there was a Flowerama on the left, and I was going north. And she'd say, well, you never bring me flowers, like even one flower. So I would look at the traffic and I go, man, I really can't. If I go in, I can't get back out. So I would tell her, I thought about getting you flowers, but that didn't work.
Doesn't fly.
But they are important.
They are. So it's little things, oftentimes it's not big things that we do. And this is what we like to just keep in mind. A great marriage is not 5 huge things that you do for one another. It's thousands of little things that you do for one another. And it's a showing appreciation, and it's showing that you're paying attention and you're caring, even though we all live very fast-paced lives, right?
Now,
this is
a
homework person. So from there, we want to move to, are there any questions on love languages? Oh, actually, I'm going to ask those of you that have done that, why don't you share with us maybe what your love languages are, if you've kind of ventured into that already?
I can go to get things started. So this actually is kind of a question I was going to ask, but when Alyssa and I first started dating, I thought my love language was quality time and physical touch. And over the course of us getting to know each other, I've actually found that my personal love language is more words of affirmation and still physical touch. I like the hand holding. So I guess the question I have, if you have time, maybe at the end, is did you find that how you sought affection from your partner changed over time, or has been pretty consistent?
Good question. Good question. I came from a very affectionate home, so I feel like the physical touch has always been probably up there. I don't know. I'm an encourager by nature. So I think words are very important because I use words to encourage people. So I think for me, I think they've always been there. It might have flopped for a while. It might have been physical touch and then words of affirmation. But I know, probably the last decade, it's been pretty much words of affirmation.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think for me, they've stayed relatively consistent. But to answer your question directly, I do think that they can change over time. Potentially, but that's really up to you. And it's funny because Cindy and I always talk about pick your top two. You always have predisposition to one. I think in the video, he's making fun of the person because he said you can only have one. You only get to pick one. It's a lot harder to pick one than it is two. But I would encourage you to have some other conversation about this, try to guess each other's love language and really sit down and have a conversation about it. Anybody else?
Well, and also ask each other, like, Doug and I, we've actually had to have conversations with each other. What does that look like? What does that look like? It wasn't Doug's idea to write me a love letter for my birthday. That did not come naturally to him. And many years ago,
we don't have time to go into
I know, but
Stop laughing, Kelly.
Many years ago, like I had to approach him like, honey, I need you to be a little bit more romantic. And he was like a deer in headlights.
No,
I'm a college football player. I have no idea what that means.
No, you know what I said to her, you guys never want to say? I said, you knew I wasn't romantic when you married me. That was not the best thing to say.
We will cover this in conflict resolution in a number of weeks.
We're gonna go off the reservation. We're on time, so let's move on to.
Does anybody else want to share real quick?
Our favorite topic.
Thank you for putting some stuff in the chat. That's good.
My love language is also words of affirmation. But Stefan, you asked a really good question because I was thinking as you guys were talking that over the years, I've grown to develop an appreciation for his love language, which is not mine. But I know when he shows love in that way, I know that he's like trying to show me that he loves me. So.
Yeah, I agree with what Stefan said about possibly changing over time. I feel like I give acts of service and I've actually come accustomed to, like you guys said, with your just receiving a letter, very cheap, anything, but she's very thoughtful in like her gift giving abilities, and the gifts she gets me, they're not pricey, but it's just like the thought that counts. And I've realized that I kind of appreciate that too.
Yeah. So gifts might be up there for you. It's the thought, like she thought of me in her busy schedule.
Yeah. We had a couple years ago, and he cut the grass. They had like 2 acres, and he walks in and he's got his chest stuck out and he keeps waiting. He's waiting for her to say, honey, the grass looks good. And she never said anything. And he had to tell her how important it was.
Yeah.
So Doug came in the last couple of times he cut the grass. I'm like, honey, the grass looks really, really good.
I'll chime in real quick, Cindy and Doug. When I became a mom and a working mom, mine switched very quickly from words of affirmation to acts of service. And it was, and I was even amazed by it. I was surprised at how much more love I felt for my husband and from him when he did acts of service than compliments were. So it was a real big shift. I mean, like Cindy, who doesn't want them all, right? But I definitely, now it is acts of service. So it's fun.
Great. Thank you for your comments in the chat.
I just want to encourage you too, that you need to kind of talk about it, because the other person, if their love language is different than yours, they might need help brainstorming what that looks like. And I know we've had to do that too. So it's a great exercise to go through with that. And so we're going to shift from love languages to your sexual relationship. And you might wonder, why are we handling this topic the very first week we're together? And the reason we're handling it is because it flows so beautifully out of covenant vow. The vow that you make to one another and the vow that you make to God. And it also flows beautifully out of love languages, because when you love each other well, then that's going to flow into wanting a deeper connection, another way to connect with each other emotionally, physically, and even spiritually. And so that is your sexual relationship with that. And so I don't know if you had a chance to watch the video, but with Alpha Us, but it is excellent. And so I would encourage you, they give you some terrific practical ideas. And then also, some other, I love the interviews. They do interviews with other couples, and they're dynamite, because everyone comes from a little bit of a different perspective. And so I find those really encouraging. So, to start with, as we're kind of moving into the intimate life of a married couple, this is a huge gift that we are given by God as a way to further connect us as a couple, to further connect us with Him. And so when we start this, just like we talked about, family of origin can really affect how we view marriage. Our family of origin can also affect how we view sex. So whether it be that in your home sex was good, it was discussed as good, it was discussed as natural, it was discussed as part of a wonderful marriage. Maybe it was never talked about at all. It was more of a taboo topic in your home, or it was more of an embarrassment, like it was a secret. You didn't really talk about those things. Or perhaps in your household, it was like, yeah, free love, man. Like, like if you like it, just do it. No boundaries. It is what it is. So, you're an adult, you consent, you can, free love. So those do impact how we look at our sexual lives. And so we also have the impact of our media, not just our families of origin, but also the media. We are bombarded by images, either on Instagram, TikTok, movies, television, video, music videos, gaming, so many things in social media now, and many of them are not really realistic. You can have hot sex, but it ain't happening that way every single time, most likely.
I literally
like 5 seconds, all your clothes are off. You're on top of the kitchen counter, and all is good. There's moments of really, intense physicalness with one another, but that is not an everyday thing. So again, it's managing expectations. And I think that's something that Doug and I have really learned over our marriage, is we have to manage our expectations and talk about our expectations with one another. And then we find that we're not quite so disappointed or then become disillusioned when we're talking about it and we are on the same page with what our expectations are. So again, just be aware that how you were brought up is going to impact how you view your sexual life in your marriage.
Okay. All right. Again, Cindy talked a little bit about the video, and it is excellent. So we do encourage you to take a look at that. And a couple things that we thought were of importance when we were going through this. They talk in there about every part of our sexual intimacy affects our marital relationship, and every part of our marital relationship will affect our sexual intimacy. And that's really true when you really stop to think about it. If we're out of relationship and we're not connected with each other, it's not going to happen. And I mentioned earlier at the beginning, where Cindy and I will get out of sync with each other. We haven't spent any time with each other because quality time is important to us. And all of a sudden, I'll be the first one to say, "Hey, let's jump in bed." And she's like, "I just can't do that right now." And at first, when she said that, I had to step back. I didn't understand that. But as I've gotten older, I bet I more understand that as we've grown closer in our relationship. And I'm now to the point where many times I feel the same way. I didn't say all the time, but many times I feel the same way, where I have to feel connected to her and in sync and in relationship with her for us to be able to have an intimate relationship.
Because really our sexual life, it's mental, it's emotional, and it's spiritual. And it is such a vulnerable thing to be with the other person. I mean, you're naked with the other person. You're giving absolutely everything that you can give to that other person. But if you don't feel emotionally connected to that person, it's really hard to fully give yourself to that other person. And that's really what God wants us to do, is fully give ourselves to our spouses. And so that is why that love language exercise is really good, because if you are making those deposits in those emotional tanks little by little, day by day, and you're spending time together, you're affirming one another, you're honey, thank you for making such a great dinner. Honey, thank you for picking up the dry cleaning, or stopping by the grocery store and taking something off my plate today. All those little things that builds up that connection with one another, and then it's easier to flow into being willing to be totally vulnerable with one another.
Yeah, and a beautiful sex life doesn't just happen. We've taken our relationship and kind of compartmentalized it to we had our honeymoon time. We call it BK. We had before kids, and then all of a sudden, and it was hot and heavy, and then all of a sudden you have kids. Well, there's a change right there. You're exhausted, you're changing diapers, you're doing all these different things. You're just tired, and you got kids all the time around. And then, then we ended up having the empty nester part, which quite frankly, we like a lot because, we have our freedom to do whatever we want when we want to do it. But you have to be intentional about keeping in relationship. You have to make it a priority. This isn't something that you can put on the back burner. And Cindy's going to talk about a couple things that we do to try to keep it fresh.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's important to keep it fresh. And with that, some of the things that we've done over the years, we've moved around a lot in our marriage. We lived in 7 different states. And so we've never lived around family. So friends became family. So, that limited us on what we could do. And also we didn't have a lot of money to do anything like really fancy. So we would have to be very creative. So things that we would do to kind of keep it fresh is we would do fun little date nights. There was one for Valentine's Day one year, I put vinyl clings all on the inside of Doug's windshield. So when he got into his car the morning to drive to work, he had his favorite candy and he had like lips all over the front of his windshield. And then it was a little bit of a kind of a scavenger hunt. So at the end of the work, there was a clue and he had to go to that place. And there was another clue and another place and another place. And so I'd gone ahead and I'd purchased all these things and attached the next clue.
The girls at the Victoria's Secret store were really excited to see me come in.
They were waiting for him all day to find out what dude is coming to pick up this package. But, fun things like that. There was one time I called him at work and I kind of toward the end of the day and I kind of on a Friday, I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm just finishing up work." I said, "Well, how quick can you finish up work? Because I'm in room 310 at the Marriott over here." And he's like, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I am. Here's the phone number." And before I know it, I hear knock, 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 knock. I mean, I don't know. He must have driven at low altitude. I mean, he must have flown over to the Marriott. But we had a babysitter. And so I just didn't have the courage to say, hey, can I rent a room for a few hours?
So I had to go down there.
So we literally we had to lie and say one of our kids got sick and we left. But we had 3 or 4 great hours together. I brought dinner and candles and I was dressed appropriately. And so, and he giggled like a little boy. He was like, you're at the hotel. I'm like, yeah, at the Marriott, room 310. So, fun little things he's done. He knew I was kind of freaking out about turning 30. So he planned a beautiful evening for us, out and about. And again, it's not spending a lot of money. It's just doing fresh things. But it doesn't always mean that you have to be creative outside your home. You can be creative inside your home. So it's about not keeping things so routine. So, instead of maybe making love in the evening, maybe one of you wake the other one up in the morning. Another one could be, we kind of a joke, afternoon delight. So, it changes with seasons too. We've noticed that in our relationship, as we're getting older and our bodies are changing, we're finding certain times work better than others. And it can change locations, change music. And that's one way that we keep it fresh. Another thing that we think is really, really important is keeping the conversation going. You would think after 40 years of marriage, like we've talked all about sex that we need to, like we totally understand everything we need to know about each other. Well, the answer is no. We still are communicating with one another. What feels good? What would you like to try? Let's be adventurous. Let's try this, today. And the fun thing is, if you're both willing to try it and it doesn't work out, humor is really so good for us, just to be able to laugh it off. Well, that didn't go quite the way we thought it would, did it? And so you're doing this together and it's an adventure to just learn about each other's bodies and know that you're, as you age, bodies change too, or just, maybe you're in a different season. Maybe, you have young kids and you're exhausted. So, you had to find those little trinkets. I mean, I remember one time, we had the kids were downstairs and I'm like, I just thought Doug looked really good that day. So I pulled him in the closet and 10 minutes and we're good. So, I mean,
that wasn't in the notes. That wasn't in the notes here.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Hey. You can keep it fresh. Are you getting embarrassed?
No. The best part about the video, because we're going to move on to the next section of this. The best part of the video was when Nikki said that the best age to have sex is when people are 65. And I'm like,
Doug's 65.
So
he's
65.
Elbowing me, babe.
So
some good stuff coming.
That just gives you hope that it does nothing but get better. And that's a wonderful lead into what does the Bible say about sex? How about that?
There you go.
And this is true. Everything Cindy said is true. Sexual intimacy, and she talked about it, is God's gift within a marriage covenant that we have. And it's a way to really deepen our love, where the two of us, the class is called Two Become One. And I think that's so true. He made our bodies to fit together, and he made our bodies to fit together for pleasure. Sex is God's powerful way to give our entire self to our spouse. What a wonderful gift that is. And this is something that I saw that I thought was so good. Sex is God's appointed way for two people to reciprocally say to one another, I belong completely, permanently, and exclusively to you. I belong completely, permanently, and exclusively to you. And every time you make love, you renew that covenant with each other. I thought that's just a wonderful thought and expression that God gives us.
I like to, think about, the sex as just this gorgeous wrapped, we just finished Christmas, this beautifully wrapped gift that God wants to just hand to that new husband and wife and say, go explore each other. I want you to love each other more deeply. I want you to bind together even more the mystery, because it says that God will bind the two into one. And like, I want you to work toward that. I want you to venture into that. I'm giving this to you. I mean, think about how a male and female's body just so perfectly comes together. God designed it that way. And so that's what he wants. It is a gift that he wants to give us. And because he's the creator of the gift, the creator has the right to put the boundaries on the gift. And so his boundary, and he knows us so intimately, he knows what's best for us. He wants the best for us. And so he puts this boundary on this gift because he knows the best part of that gift is within a marriage covenant between a man and a woman in matrimony. And, as followers of Jesus, we want to follow Jesus and the way Jesus wants us to work in that. And so he is inviting us to say, do you trust me in my wisdom? Do you trust me with my gift, with the boundaries that I put on it, because I want the very best for you? And so that is what he's asking of us. And to be quite honest, our story is not a perfect story. I wish we could say it was a perfect story, that we waited until our wedding night to make love for the first time. Doug's the only man I've been with, but we did not wait until our wedding night. We had been dating over a year. We were in college, and we just didn't have the self-control. It was special. It was a weekend. We went away, but it was not done the way Jesus probably would have wanted me to do it. And so what happened was we were active for a while, and then about a year later, I thought I was pregnant. And so that really kind of took us by surprise. And for 2 weeks, that really kind of rocked our world a little bit. I was engaged. We were engaged at the time. But then I ended up not being pregnant. And we just felt that was an opportunity for God to invite us. And it was a way that he kind of got our attention and just invited us into, mark this day and have a new beginning. I am a God who's a restorer. I'm a God of second chances, and I really want the best for you. And so from that moment on, we were not intimate at all. And 8 months later, we got married. And I will tell you, that made that wedding night and our honeymoon really special. We were able to feel like it was fresh, on our honeymoon. We were excited to be able, and we felt so free. We felt so free that God wanted this for us now that we were man and wife. So God is for sex and marriage. And if you've ever read the book, The Song of Solomon, man, it is a racy book, and it is in the Bible. He wants us to be totally engaged in exploring each other's body. God is for sex. And if you don't know that book, that Song of Solomon is about a newlywed couple that are exploring each other's bodies, that are uttering words of delight and wonder and of the commitment that they have for one another.
As Cindy said, our story is not perfect, but, God is a God of restoration, and God's inviting us to use this gift as he intended it to be. Not, but just as in our story, we were not perfect, and God does give us do-overs, and we're grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as followers of Jesus, right? we are saying, we trust you. And I remember hearing something years ago that the best life is being in the center of God's will for your life. So it's to follow Jesus, and as he invites you into following him, just not only in your sexual life, but in all parts of our life. But as we're investigating our sexual life in the confines of marriage, it just, kind of it led me to thinking, gosh, what would Jesus say if he sat down with you tomorrow morning with your tea or your coffee? What would he want to talk to you about in your intimate life with your partner? Would he tell you that you need to be honest? Are there some things that you haven't told your partner that they really need to know about your past relationships? Now, this does not mean you have to go into great detail, but we have just found that if these things are not brought forward now, and if they come out, let's say 3 years, 4 years into your marriage, and then all these surprises start to come out, it can feel like betrayal if it's not brought forward now. Now is the time to share your history with one another. So as Jesus is sitting down with you with your coffee and your tea, and you're kind of hanging out, would he say, hey, I want to encourage you to keep your purity. I know it's been hard, but I want to encourage you, keep going? Or would he invite you to make that mark that day, to have a new beginning on your wedding night, to say, you know what? I, have a new plan with that. So what would Jesus say as you are in your current relationship? Because Doug and I just want to encourage you, God is for you, and God is for sex. He is for sex in marriage, and he is for a permanent, committed relationship within the marriage covenant. And we just hope that tonight you've been able to kind of wrap your mind around this concept of covenant marriage, of the vows and the commitments that you will make to each other, the ways that you can deposit into each other's emotional tanks and learn to love each other well, and then to flow that love and let that love illuminate a very special gift that God gives married couples of physical intimacy that connects them even more and draws their love to even deeper levels that they never thought were possible. Ellie, do you want to ask questions, or do you want us to go ahead and pray? We have a few more minutes, I think.
Well, I have a few things I think I'd like to say as well, just maybe to talk about. This is the first class of 6, and we have lots of other areas of marriage to talk about. But we started with this. We started with marriage covenant because it is where we are going. It's the point, of everything else. When we think about having a covenant with one another and promising and committing and all these other things, then we say, okay, all of these other things come under that. And what we want to know, Doug mentioned it earlier, is that there are lots of different things that affect our relationship, our sexual relationship with one another. It isn't separate from the other things in our lives. So we want to remember that what God knows is that we really need that commitment in order to be the best husband or wife we can be. We need this commitment to one another. And one of the things that I've realized over the years is that a lot of times in our world today, we plan a wedding and we take, we plan 2 years, take 2 years to plan a wedding, but we don't wait to have sex. we're committed to one another. And so that feels like enough. And so we do that. And then we spend 2 years together, or, that's obviously just an example, but, and then the wedding comes, and it is just kind of like, and what is going to be different, I guess, is what I always want to know, is if we wait 2 years to get married, but we live as husband and wife before that, is there any reason that we're waiting? And usually what I do is I ask couples, if you didn't have to plan a wedding or pay for a wedding, when would you be married? And almost always it's yesterday. Like there's nothing in the way, like there's nothing they want to do before they get married. There's nothing else that has to be done. And so, what I've realized is that Jesus doesn't ask you to wait 2 years and to have sex. He's not. He's saying, when you're committed to one another, get married. And so I guess what I'm saying is Jesus loves weddings. I love weddings. They're amazing. Receptions are wonderful. But sometimes if you can't do that in a reasonable amount of time for yourselves to stay pure in your relationship, then maybe it's time to think about having a ceremony, a covenant ceremony, and getting married, and then having a wedding with a reception when you're able to. And the reason I talk about this tonight is because we're talking about the covenant. The wedding and the reception are, usually like a very big party. And so they're two separate things. You don't need the one to have the other. It's wonderful when it's together. Mm-hmm. So often what we have offered folks is that we will do a covenant wedding. So sometimes I've met with just the couple and married them, or we've just had parents there or just their children there. I've done dozens of these. And so they have that time, they get their wedding license, they are legally and spiritually married. They have their covenant with God. And then whenever the time is, let's say a year and a half from then, this especially happened during COVID, by the way, when folks had to cancel their weddings and they wanted to be married. So we did that. But then you can go and have your wedding, and the pastor will come and do that wedding as well. And it's a renewal of your vows. I think that what I want to communicate here is the value that's placed on the covenant. So as we go through the classes, you'll be able to see how Jesus is wanting to join us in every single area of our relationship. And we can say to one another, or you can say to one another, this is something that I'm ready to do. If you have been together a long time. I met with a couple recently this year who had been together 7 years, and they were now ready to get married. And I don't know why exactly it was, but that's a really long time to wait to make your covenant. Everybody has different reasons. We'd like you to think about, why are we waiting? And do we need to wait to make this covenant with God? So that's something for you to think about. It is not something that we say has to happen. At Vineyard Columbus, we meet each couple individually and have them think about how they want to move forward. So we invite you into this relationship with God. So if anyone has any questions right now, I will answer them. But we are coming up on the end of our time. And each week, I will stay on after the call, and Cindy and Doug will stay on with me tonight. And you can ask questions as people go on with their evenings and hang up. You can stay on and talk and ask questions. Or I am available to talk at any time if you want to. I think one of our couples tonight, I'm going to be making an appointment with, but I would love to meet with you at any time you want to talk about any of this. So thank you, Doug and Cindy. It has been wonderful to hear your fun stories again for me, and I hope everyone else enjoyed them as well.
Hey, Kelly, can you tell them about the coaching program? Do you want to do?
Yeah, well, but actually that's for after.
Okay.
If you want to know about that, I won't make everybody, I mentioned it in the beginning. Coaching program, just real simply is 4 to 6 times, before and after you're married. You're matched with a coach couple who's been trained, just to come alongside you. And so the first step for that is to come in and meet with me. And then we match you up with a coach couple. There's nobody like Doug and Cindy, but we have a bunch of great couples. So that's the coaching program. And by the way, you do not have to do that. If you do want to have a wedding through Vineyard Columbus, you also meet with me, and we help you do what is in your hearts to do. So very good. Okay. Well, Doug and Cindy, will you pray over us as we go? And then when we're done, everybody can we'll say goodnight to each other. Maybe turn your cameras on and unmute, and everybody say goodnight at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dear Lord, we acknowledge that you are God Almighty. You are creator of all things, and you know all things. We just thank you for your abounding love and mercy and grace that you pour over us each and every day. I thank you for each couple that is represented on this call tonight. Will you draw them closer to one another? Will you ignite good conversation? Will you illuminate new finds in one another? May they go back through their homework and just engage in conversation so they can learn more about each other. They can deepen their understanding for one another. And we thank you, Lord, that you have the best for us in mind with our covenant, that you want to join couples together and make them one with you at their head as you guide them through their life together.
And Lord, I just ask for the presence of the Holy Spirit on all these couples to just bless their conversation and give them some thoughts to ponder. And we just pray for great conversation from here, Lord. We thank you for their courage to be here. We thank you for their commitment to go through this class. It shows that their love, Lord, for each other and their love for you, and the fact that they want to create a new legacy potentially. So we ask for your blessing on that. And Lord, the people say the Bible talks in so many ways about the prohibitions against sex, but we know that there's also many places where you talk about the gift that you've given us of sex within a marriage relationship and how you do love that and you do bless us with that. So we just thank you for that. We just thank you for the opportunity to get together and just to share your word tonight. Bless us with continued safety. Bless our relationships, and we love you, Jesus. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all.
See you again soon.
Never know when.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Hi, Daniel.
There he
See your
is.
face, Daniel.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you. Thanks.